Rolling. I'm Debashish Majumdar. I'm an architect and I practice in Delhi. And my association with CRMK goes back many, many years. I've worked with Mr. Mahesh Bansal and his family for many, many years. So it's great to be here actually.
We are so honored to have Mr. Debashish here.
Thank you so much. Okay, so right off the bat, we are all designers, and we all get our inspiration somewhere, somehow, and things. And we, at the end, tend to have a certain way of working. There's something in our designs which always reflects or talks about what we are all about. So, if I was to ask you, what is your, design style, and how does it show up in your work?
I think so. So it's pretty much dominated by who your client is at the moment, I guess, because we are mostly into houses. So every house needs to reflect the personality of who inhabits the space more than the designers. That's my personal belief, which is why I think every space ends up looking different. However, there is one underlining factor which is common in all our projects or which resonates the most with us is we how our personalities are like attributes to many, many small things that we do and we like, which is what we try to portray in our house. We try to collect things or curate things, many multidisciplinary things, like, maybe something which is a reflection of who they were, who their ancestors were. So maybe if somebody is a Punjabi, we try to pick up something which is a very predominant cultural thing. It could be an element, it could be simply just like an artwork. So I guess a lot of culture is exhibited in most of our projects. And even if it's a modern home, it's never just a straight line modern home. We do have traces of tradition in all
Wonderful.
our projects.
And of course, she has recently done a Bengali Connect.
Yes, yes.
So the owners are Bengali.
Yeah. So they wanted a bit of Calcutta.
Yeah, so they have tried their best to put that element in their design so that they, relate to the design they are living in for years. So everything is related to culture.
So, Parul, what's your design philosophy?
See, we do basically healthcare. So in healthcare design, main design philosophy is functionality. So if you go to old school, FLW is it's like, we think so. We cannot take his elevation concept, but he worked on grids. So in hospital also, functionality, form follows function. So all our basically the basic element of our hospital design is functionality. So it goes about it, and every site which we have got is different sizes. It's a triangle, something is a triangle, some is a long elongated rectangle. We never got a good site. So it's like every time we have to literally work on the plans. So it's different all the time, but elevation wise, it is generally, I think, global when we talk about healthcare.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, you talked about bringing in culture. How Indian do you think your designs are?
So I think more or less people these days, most of the clients are looking for something contemporary. But I try to bring in something from culture or something from Indian values, maybe through prints, maybe through upholstery. Because I would really like that certain element which says that yes, it's an Indian house, or it is not something, it's an European house or it's an American house. No, it's an Indian house. So maybe the carpets, maybe the paintings, or maybe the curtains, then at least, or the cushions, at least they would say that yes, it's an Indian house. The color or the pop of color, the forms, they would say that it's an Indian house.
Wonderful. Surbhi, how important do you think is it to reflect the designer's sensibility, and it should be over the client's sensibility, or you think the client's sensibility should really rule a space?
So I think that in terms of aesthetics and what they want should be client. One, they are the users, eventual users of the space. Secondly, they are the one who are also the funders. So technically, it is their project. So whereas when it comes to the architects, I feel they have come to you for a reason. Even though there are many architects in the city, and they have come to you for a reason. And that reason could be maybe how articulate you are, or how you define the spaces in terms of function, form, or they like your aesthetics. So maybe for whatever reasons they have chosen you is what you blend in. And the rest, I think, has to be client. I feel
So, this is I think, a debate which is part of the design fraternity, I feel, as to how much of the designer should reflect in a design which you are not funding, which you are not using at the end of the day. So, what are your views on it, Varsha?
I think there are different situations because we deal with it daily. We have clients on one hand and we have designers accompanying them. So the designer is suggesting something and the client is suggesting something else which is not matching at all. So it depends. I mean, sometimes the clients have really good taste, and but then we should not really impose something. We should, I believe interior designers work is like जैसे एक माला को पिरोया जाता है ना, तो वो मोती क्लाइंट चुनता है और उसे पिरोते हम हैं, डिजाइनर्स हम पिरोते हैं. इट्स लाइक अ सॉन्ग, वी पुट ट्यून टू इट. So the choices, small choices are of a client, and we make it so harmonious like a song that it looks beautiful, But sometimes the client's choice is so bad that you can't.
But we can't help it. We can't lose the client. I think so. Matlab, we cannot. For example, I'll give you an example. Neha, we work together. So we had made one design which had a stark red and a blue combination. And Neha was like, Parul, you're doing this. Manika, my client likes this. What can we do?
And going back to this, that's where I feel the difference between an artist and a designer comes in. When you're an artist, you are self-expressive. You can do whatever you want on that canvas because it's your design. But as a designer, I cannot really do that. At the end of the day, it's my client's house. They have to live it, or it's their space.
Also, I've seen many a times when sometimes architects overimpose and do it their way.
Yeah.
See, architect goes once the house is done and
Yes,
finished.
absolutely.
Eventually, when they start living, they bring in their things.
Yeah,
They bring in their prints. They bring in their objects. They bring in their artifacts, and then it looks like such a
Horrible.
kitchery.
It looks horrible.
Because it looks horrible. You have done your photography and put it in your portfolio, but then it doesn't matter. But it looks hideous. But if you have from the beginning only understood their philosophy, their thought process, and then built on that, then the house,
I'm so happy to know that this is the general way of thinking, because I've also come across so many architects who are designers, I should say, who believe that it's my way or the highway. I mean, the fact that you're hiring me, they feel it has to be what I'm saying, and they actually outrightly tell the clients that what you're saying is rubbish and what I'm doing for you
And
is good.
Debashish, maybe it is true for smaller projects. Like when we do bigger projects and to retain the client for years, it's like we do institutes and all. And if we are retaining the client for say 10 years, 15 years, we need to listen to him. If we say it is my way or highway, then you are gone. Then you
Parul,
get
my
another.
experience has been that for larger projects, the client actually lets you do a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas smaller ones,
Yes.
they feel they know better. Yeah. And then they kind of, I should use the word interfere, but they kind of.
But I think the other way, whatever clients experience I have had, it's like residential, you can still maneuver them, ma'am. It'll look good, sir. It'll look good, this, that. But
I thought it would be the other way. Yeah, I thought it would be the other way.
Such a diverse thing. My experience is absolutely
like for
the
a hospital, I'll tell you, one client came to us and he said, I want a classical building. And it was a huge hospital of 10 floors and he wanted a classical elevation. What do we do? He wants cornices, he wants columns, and who puts columns in a hospital? But he was not ready to change it. So it's like, I've got such clients.
Vision of
So he had that thing, I want that. So finally we had to make it.
Like I said, it's a chemistry. You have to put those elements, because eventually it's their project. We have to, make it in a way that it suits them also, and it's a good design.
And finally, we need to give the correct advice also. Okay, we have to stop here. Yeah. That we need to give.
Exactly.
He takes or not is, I think, secondary. We need to say.
Because they can often bring on both things that are going to jeopardize your concept also.
But we need to tell them.
You also work very hard as a designer for that concept. Which you've actually derived only after having like a strenuous discussion and an in-depth discussion after showing mood boards. Nobody ever reaches that stage without having gone through the mood board stage, So I guess so many times it has to be like a hard stop wherein you do tell them that there's a reason why you've hired us and there must be some belief that you have in us, which is why you need to
listen
to some notes.
Actually, We do that.
Yeah.
And like for that classical example I was giving, so we then came to something in the middle. Let's keep some things and not make it too extravagant. It's not a hotel.
Yeah.
So then we have to tell, but we had to keep some things that he liked. So somewhere in between.
It's a give and take.
Yeah,
So
give
where
and
to
take.
stop design is also very, very important.
Yes.
Yes.
Tell us more about it. I mean, why do you feel that?
Because it's very easy to go overboard. I mean, clients come with a lot of whims and fancies. You know, even in a space which is, let's say, 2,000 square feet, but they vision something which is apt for maybe a 5,000 square feet space, and it's not really possible to do it. So you have to tell them, no, this is where we stop. This is where we do not go overboard. It's very, very important, I think, stopping design at a point.
So, Surbhi, another thing is, we in India have some beautiful crafts and, art and all that. How, I mean, do you ever use craft or art in your work?
Yeah, I think again depends on the projects that we are doing. So one of the projects we had done for an art collector who had art worth maybe millions, and for him that architecture design started from, okay, this art will go here, this art will go here, this art needs a double height, this art's installation needs a triple height. So the whole building was designed around where he will place which art.
So that's a very specific thing. So what if you were doing something which is mundane and usual, would you use art or craft as
I would love to personally, but I think I would definitely check what is the client's vibe to it, because as I said, I have seen so many homes designed by such amazing architects that they look very beautiful in papers, in photographs, but eventually when people start living, then they just look so different, because people have brought in their elements and their personality. So if your art is aligned with the personality of the user, then it all harmoniously looks beautiful.
What's your take, Nishtha?
I feel, okay, so of course, traditional is one thing, but how we work normally is we get clients so we call the Concrete story, and we basically, all our concepts are based on the stories that we understand from the clients, has been their life story, what do they do personally, what is their equations with the family, etc., whether it's going to be a nuclear home, whether it's going to be a joint family, etc., etc. Now, we could have a house wherein some people are looking for a very traditional home, whereas there are 3 other people who are looking at a very contemporary modern home. So how do you meet in between is basically what which is where this started also, because early on when we started off, we were doing a lot of family homes, and we realized that it's the material that Indian market has the best, in the sense, we always perceive cane, rattan, wicker, whatever we want to call it, we always perceive it to be a very traditional material. Because probably Fab India made it so famous and unique and whatever, that people just could think of it in a very traditional setup. Whereas what we started doing, I mean, I'm sure there were many others also, but we personally decided to use that material in a very modern way. We started mounting it on very deep colored canvases, and like something like a deep blue or a deep red. And when you mount it against something like that, and you can also always polish it into a darker color, and you polish them, and it comes out looking like a very modern contemporary artwork, something which could be sitting in a gallery and you could easily be pricing it at any price that you would want to quote it. So frankly, for us, it's the traditional craft that we want to use, not necessarily in its own original form of art, but maybe from the sense of its material originality.
So reinterpret the art in a way
is what we try to do most.
Yeah, but does art form
it's a
an
very
important part
very
of your
big
design?
Part. Very,
of
very
course,
big part.
I mean, in anyways, anything that you use, whether it's your furniture, whether it's the curtains, whether it's you have to use it. Now it's your choice whether it comes out from machine or does it come out with
for
the
a
hand.
lot of people, I'm finding that art is not central. So they design everything and then they feel that ye diwar khali hai, so let's hang something there. Whereas my philosophy would be I would actually start with something and then work around it. Maybe pick up the colors from the piece of art and work on the.
I think so. How it happens is this, like for instance, in the last 7-8 years only, I think we've seen personally a shift of how we plan spaces. When we started off, it was more it was more 3D centric, to be putting it very bluntly. What looks the best in 3D so that the client feels satisfied was one approach. Later, when we started and when we had done enough work, did we realize that actually it's the material board that becomes the backbone of every project. So the first thing that we now do is, when we have a mood board ready in place, when we have a concept ready, we always come up with a material board, okay, which could be 12 materials, which could be 30 materials, or it could be just 5 materials. Because your concept pretty much predominantly is right there. It's literally right there. I mean, if you try to study a contemporary house, if you try to study a modern home versus you study a very traditional home, and tradition, I don't necessarily mean Indian. It can be a Spanish home. It can be, a Parisian house, any other thing also. Traditional houses will always have a million elements coming in together. Whereas a contemporary or a modern board is always going to be more loosely packed.
One predominant
Yes,
element.
it will always have not a very wide Pandora of material interplay, which is... Yeah.
So that brings me to the next question I'm going to ask everybody. Less is more. Do you believe in this, or do you think otherwise?
Depends
So-
on the project, I think.
Yes, truly.
Now, what's your philosophy? See, one thing is you come under the client's pressure and say, we are doing this. But what would you, what is you?
What would Parul do?
What would Parul
I
do?
think
Given a
depends on
freelance.
the place we are designing. And it's like if you're designing a discotheque or if you're designing a restaurant, I think we need something more. We can't,
No,
it can't be like a dining room of
you can
my...
have restaurants which are overdone and very nice, and you can have restaurants which are very sparse and frugal and yet look very nice. So, what would Parul go for?
I would like less.
Less
Less
is
is
more.
more.
What
Less
about
is
you?
more.
Same here. Less is more.
Less is more. What about
I'm
you?
not a match for this.
I have
You look at
recently-
me. I literally am a mixed metal person. I wear gold, silver, copper, everything all at once.
So you believe less is a bore. What about you?
So I think I would always go less is more for sure. But I did one of my houses in Gurgaon where I did the same philosophy. But over time, I started finding it also very clinical when I started living in it. So I have started layering it now. Obviously, not to the level where it becomes overwhelming, but I would probably say that somewhere in between, where it is clean, it is spiritual in terms of the space where it gives you space to think. It's not overwhelming and overpowering, but at the same time, it also has some elements which bring personality, which bring warmth, which have a story to tell.
Wonderful. Varsha, your take on this?
Same. So initially I was like less is more, because you don't have to clean it and maintain it.
Yeah, of course, that's another point.
That
But
was my
cleanliness,
my
yeah.
point of view.
Mm.
But lately I have started again giving personality to each and every element. So to give that personality, we need to layer it again. I mean, just like Surbhi said, give it more elements. Every corner, I want to, decorate corners and give character to even bed sheet and even curtains. Earlier, it was all plain and simple, and everything that can be easily dry cleaned and not maintained.
But I think if you're talking about a residence, then you keep on adding things. But other places you don't add so much. So I think residence is a different ball game.
I think, Parul, your point of reference is actually a different point, where you are looking at more of a public usage
Yeah,
space,
because-
whereas you're looking at a very
Yes.
private, personal.
Yes.
But
usage
no,
space.
even in a public space, only yesterday I was looking at some project that a Swedish healthcare company has done, and they were promoting it. And because it's, Swedish, so obviously it was very clean, very stark, and just, one chair in the middle of this room where they would do testing.
That, in India, we
You know,
cannot
so-
do that.
so-
It's like
so you-
seeing
so-
the population.
Yeah, so basically you have that kind of very minimalistic also approach that
We
usually
have to keep it because
Huh.
there's so many people around. So less is
I think
okay.
I would say that for me the word would be balance. So whatever you do, there should be a balance in the space, whether it comes
Who
with
likes
colors,
Sabyasachi design?
it comes with materials,
Home.
it comes with light and drama.
Love it.
But there should be a balance.
I mean,
I love it. I love
if you
the
ask
look.
me the
Sorry.
same question, I, I don't. I don't entirely subscribe to less is more, but I also feel we should know when to stop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Very,
course.
very
exactly.
important.
Absolutely.
Because beyond the point, it becomes kitsch and it
Absolutely.
becomes
Yeah, absolutely.
overpowered.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we fortunately live in we have a culture which has so much to offer, and it's a pity
If you just discard and not
Yes.
really
Yeah,
bring it
Where
in.
do
yeah.
we fit in all the stuff?
yeah,
You
it's
know,
not
all the
only-
elements.
Yeah, listen, of course, everything is a style and everything has its due place.
And
I
also
am
you
just
can-
asking you for
for
your
your
personal,
personal preference, yeah,
what
yeah.
would you do? You
Yeah,
know?
for-
As,
so
as
one-
women, we all want less is more because it's maintenance free. Who wants to come back to chores?
So Nishtha talked about a material board and things. I mean, are there any pet materials or favorite materials that you like to use, say for
We-
your elevations, for
exposed
example,
brick.
or
Exposed
exposed brick? That's my favorite too.
So whether it's a hospital or a institutional building or even a residence, exposed brick.
Okay, any material board that you
I still have it in my living room. I have an exposed brick wall. And
no other than the building structure. If I was to say interiors, I mean, are there any materials like you would like? Which is your favorite? I mean, which is your go-to material? Which you say, ये लगा लेते हैं, तो बड़ा अच्छा लगेगा.
I don't know. I mean, solid wood obviously comes in place because you cannot really do furniture without it.
Yeah.
So pieces done on lathe, which has that
Okay.
the little curves falling, and they could be anywhere. They could be a leg to a table. They could just be a bar of it in the corner somewhere. So pieces done on lathe really excites me.
Wonderful, Surbhi.
I think for me it would be stone, different kinds of stone, and definitely a lot of black stone, because I think it's really timeless. Lot of interesting textures that you can play with, and I think then of course wood. Just the stone, black stone, and wood combination to me is ultimate.
I think also stone never gets old because every
Yeah.
time it's a different pattern and different.
Yeah, and different kinds of stones have there's so much beauty in just a slab of stone.
It's a natural
Yeah.
beauty.
And you, of course, we know you love rattan.
But
else?
there's so much. But if there was one material, I think linen I'm obsessed with.
Oh.
I love using a lot of raw linen. Like recently, we started experimenting with like a lot of banana fiber and like natural made fibers, natural made cloth, hemp, cotton. I think they've got this innate sense of luxury to them, which I guess again, if I'm doing a modern house and if I juxtapose like a very modern looking wall with a very contemporary art with a sofa done in pure hemp cotton, I think for me that's design. I personally love the interplay of these three materials that come from three different worlds altogether, and for me it's mostly upholstery related also.
Wonderful. Okay, there's one thing which we all designers are blacklisted for, which is we are all blamed for spending too much money. We mostly people say, "Acha designer rakhoge fir to bada mehenga hoga." So a lot of people have this perception that good design comes at a price. So this is a question which I would like to ask all of you. What is your take on it? I mean,
When you say price, you mean the price of the architect, or you mean the price of the project?
no. So basically, what people's perception is that if you hire designers, your end product is going to be far more expensive.
Oh, okay.
That's
I
why.
personally feel that's not true.
Yeah.
In fact, I feel that once a budget is given to a designer, they would utilize the budget much more judiciously.
Absolutely.
Because that's the whole point of being a designer.
Okay, maybe I should ask you another question. Do you believe that good design only comes at a price?
No, I feel luxurious design may come at a price.
Yes.
But
very
good
correct,
design,
yeah.
definitely not. Because good design is all about an architect's good sense of how they marry functionality to the usability, to the maintenance, to the materials, to aesthetics, everything put together in the right way. And that does not mean that you have to use expensive materials.
Absolutely.
Yeah, same luxurious designs come at a price. So luxury doesn't mean just luxury in terms of material, luxury also in terms of space. So it's like so many times client says, I want everything open, but you have not given all the things that we require. So it's like, if you want that luxury, obviously you need more space or you need more area. So that will, it's like add to the price. So that ways. But otherwise, I think when we say ki, our quote is like our fees will be recovered in the money that you save. So that way.
Correct. I agree.
Good marketing line, I would say.
I agree. So no, exactly what they said. I think definitely comes at a price. Luxury design definitely comes at a price. But if you talk about if it comes at a cost, then I guess the entire idea where people still feel that hiring a designer, as you said, is going to be always expensive. It's not necessary. If it's expensive, it's going to be good.
Yeah, that's also true.
That's also another take to it. You could hire somebody who's straight out of college, brilliant with their aesthetics, because I think it's the only field which is not necessarily, it's not like you have to have like a great deal of experience to be able to design a good space. It could be still another theory wherein you may not be able to pull it off in actuality. But you can always design.
It's like you can design and exexecution.
Yeah,
both.
exactly my point, right? So you can always, if you're talking in those terms, there could be someone who is extremely creative, but a starter could be charging much less. It's all about how you want to perceive it, whether you want to bring out only the part which is their best ability and have someone else execute it maybe. So in those senses,
execution is something which comes with experience.
Yes.
Design need not
necessarily.
Yes.
I think we've kind of wavered from the topic.
Yeah.
But, suppose you meet somebody who's trying to design their home themselves, and when you talk to them, they say, "Hey, designer se to bada hi mehenga hota hai." So they're not doing. What would you say to them?
So I would say we will end up saving your money. A lot of time you would see something, aajkal to Pinterest hai, right? You'll see something on Pinterest and you will tell your carpenter, "Bhaiya ji ye bana dijiye." And I have myself seen at least 10, 20 of my future clients who were not my clients before. They got something made and they had to break it down. कि ये वैसा तो नहीं लग रहा जैसा फोटो में लग रहा, because you did not have a person who would actually put it in a better way up there. So we save your time, energy and money by actually giving you what you see in pictures and how will it.
Also, another thing I always tell my some of the people I know, and then when they say that, okay, let's not hire an architect, वो क्या करेगा, ये तो हम ही कर लेंगे. So I always tell them that when you go for a heart surgery or any surgery, would you go to the best hospital but choose the worst surgeon? So they would say obviously not. So I said you would spend on the best surgeon. Why? You might as well go to use a cheap room in a let's say less expensive hospital. But you'll go to the best surgeon, right? So that's what I say. You spend maybe 1 crore, 2 crore, 5 crore on your residence. Does that 20 lakh to a designer pinch you when you're going to stay in that house for next 10 years, 20 years of your life? So that architect is the one who's going to make you judiciously use that 5 crores that you've taken out for that project.
For me, it's different. I have seen clients who are actually very keen to hire a good designer and they don't mind paying.
That's because they come to you afterwards.
Yeah.
Where do you get those clients?
Yeah.
Then they've already done the tiny bit of experimentation on their own, and then they concluded that
maybe.
And then they come to you.
I think there is a different take, sir. We have a lot of clients who are young corporate people who've made it big, and they're doing their first houses, first apartments. Very aspirational, of course, because it's the first project, and they very much, because I think that culture, or maybe it's a younger, as compared to people who normally make their houses, a younger generation, and because they've seen their parents build it on their own, they know the downside of doing it.
And they understand the value of consultancy.
Yes, they understand the value of consultancy.
Yes.
Exactly my point.
Yes.
I think
Also,
because they are professionals themselves,
Yes.
they
Yes.
understand what a
True.
professional
I
brings to
also
the
feel,
table.
while at the same time, also feel a lot of young people find it also a way to say that, oh, this architect is doing my house. It's also a way to
It's a branding, right?
It's a branding thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they trust the process
Absolutely.
nowadays.
Yes.
Because see, they don't have time.
Yes.
Earlier, they used to have time. The client now, today, they have less time, more money. And they want to trust it to a professional. The only fight is to find the person who has the same wavelength and the vision they are thinking for their house. That finding the right person for this job is the main fight these days.
So we are sitting in CRMK, and it's one of the best curated tile stores that we are. Honestly, and I'm not saying this to make you
Thank
happy, but
you.
so often when I think I need to go and see tiles, I would come here because I know I would see a whole array and all the different varieties and things, and it's so much easier to kind of select and pick. So this is a question which goes to all of you, and I'll start with you. Stone versus tile. I mean, if you had to use, if there was a space where you could use stone or tile, what would you use and why?
And why actually, see, starting with my own projects, when we do hospitals, so just it's like depends on the suppose pocket of the client. Lobbies and all, we try to make it a little in maybe Italian and everything, but rest of the whole hospital or healthcare or institutes, we try to make it in tiles. And now with the full body tiles, I think that's like we are using it so it's like everywhere we are using full body tiles because of its functionality. So I think for the bigger areas, we are going for tiles. But given, suppose if it's a residence, personally, I would go for stone.
Neha?
No, totally depends. Maybe open areas, in a residence only I would talk. Open areas could be in stone, but let's say bedroom or a more private space, I would like to bring in the pattern, which stone, so I would rather do them in tiles. And rightly, like the way you said, CRMK actually has one of the best collections. In fact, I told you about one of my clients who compared you to one of the leaders in the field.
Yes, that was.
We
You
went
made
there
my
as well.
day.
I would not name them.
She sent me a screenshot and she said, so I was like, oh my god, itni khushi.
Yes.
But I think it's for wall or floors. That also, it's like
both.
so for walls, so obviously tiles only. So that way, so
No,
that
it's not
because
obvious.
not obvious
It's
in the
not
sense
obvious.
ki, yeah, it's like
It's not
It's
obvious.
actually also from the point of view of how diverse you want it to be. I guess stones don't give you that kind of diversity, because if you want that diversity, you have to be prepared to be spending 10 times of what you'll be
actually
spending.
almost 10 times.
10 times. So tile gives you that sense of, I think the luxury of choice is there in tiles. You don't have that in stone, at least not at a very rational bracket. So for me, it's stone. It's tiles anyway. If I have to do a stone, I would still prefer it to be an Indian stone, like a katappa, like a limestone. But again, that's a personal sense of design and aesthetic.
Everybody has their
But
own
I
personal
think
sense.
the mix works.
Yeah.
Mix works.
Mix works.
So, as I had earlier said, that stone for me is a great material to use. But that said, I also know that stone is very difficult to change. Once you lay it, then it's very difficult to change. And in today's time, the houses are getting renovated very often. People are expanding families or moving out or anything like that. Then it's very difficult to change that design. So I think there would be a certain kind of, like I would say, stability versus some spaces which need a lot of, that, it can be renovated over time. So that's where the tiles will come in, because it's easy to refit. Whereas where it is stone, you know that this place is not going to change.
Okay,
And
so
you
for
have multiple
example,
options, and you have multiple options. There is no end to the design of the tiles, and in stone you have limited options.
So, let's say if I was to give you a specific thing, like let's say you're designing a bathroom. So, of course, stone versus tile is the debate. But, when you're designing a bathroom, what is your focus on? I mean, what is your basic essence? I mean, where do you start?
So I think it's definitely about how the space planning is very important, I think, in a bathroom. And whether it's a big bathroom or a small bathroom, where you keep the wet area, where you keep the dry areas. And also, I think the experience, the psychology of the person in that space. Because I think whatever your house budget is, I think everybody would like a luxurious bathroom in that budget. So I think how you make that bathroom very precious in a way where the person feels special, and so it's I would definitely want to give them like large slabs where the counters are there, maybe a space where plants can be put in, benches can be put in, and definitely how the WC can be concealed. It's not just right in your face. And and then functionality. I've seen so many architects or designers where they don't even know on which side the faucets should be put in, the which sides the tissue holder has to go in. So some of those very basic things are so wrong. that that you cannot go wrong in that tiny space in the bathroom, I think.
I'll quote Shah Rukh Khan in this. So he said, after all the work and stardom and everything, my me time is in my bathroom.
I think for all of us. Yeah, I think it's for all of us like that.
Yeah, for all of us.
So in a public realm, I mean, what's your design philosophy when you're doing a bathroom?
For the differently abled, and generally also it's like when it's a public building, so it has to be accessible. And then rightly that Surbhi said ki wet areas and dry areas, wet areas have to be far away from the dry area so that there is no mishap, and accessibility is the major criteria. So if we are making differently abled washrooms or we are generalizing, so it's like it should be all very patient friendly, or it's like normal person friendly, user friendly.
Great. And you, Nishtha?
Similar, sir. It's if it's a small bathroom, you try to make it look large. If it's a large
Using
bathroom, then
mirrors.
you try to incorporate as much and all that you can. It's pretty much the same. It's more actually experience based. It's one place where you genuinely think of what the experience is going to be like, because as compared to every other space that you're doing, it's a tighter one. So yeah, that's
And Neha?
Also, the fact, the aesthetics of it, because it is the area which is not easily, you cannot really renovate it, whether it is tile or stone, as Surbhi pointed it out. So I try to be very careful with the clients, that you're really sure that this is the color or this is the print we want. This is not like an upholstery or a curtain where, you would just go and change it the next month. This is something that would be there till your next renovation. So that is something I really try and take care of, apart from ergonomics, of course.
Wonderful. Great. So, one thing that's, I think, coming through out of all our conversations is that, all of you believe that design has to be very contextual. Design one has to be ready to change one's thought process depending upon the needs of the design. And I think that's very nice. And, frankly, it's a little fresh, because I do also encounter a lot of people who believe in a certain way of designing. I mean, they have like a template in their mind, and because that kind of illustrates their personality or their trademark style, and then they do that. They will just start doing that only. But I'm really happy to see that we have a panel here who's ready to kind of bend to the requirements of this particular situation, and also the client. And that brings me to the last question, which I think should be a very personal question to each one of you, and that is, what is good design according to you? I'll start with you, actually, Varsha.
Me?
Yeah.
I like a lot of patterns, and an image of personal taste is good design for me. If I am living in a space and I relate to everything that is around me, everything that's around me brings memories of my good times, you know, doesn't make me, run to clean it, and it just makes me happy. That is good design. Also, one very important aspect is, because I love nature, and in today's time, we are unfortunately in very enclosed spaces. We can't help it. So something that brings outside inside is a good design for me, personally.
Wonderful. What about you?
Good design for me, it's like when we can blend function and aesthetics both, getting to something which is more or less timeless. It should not be like, there should not be a need to change it very often. So that blend, if we get the right blend.
You used the word just now, and I'll come back to you with that. Okay, what about you?
I think the word I would coin is soothing. So for me, good design is, it should be soothing. I should be able to, if I'm sitting in the space which is designed in a good way, I should be able to take my mind wherever I want to. It should be that kind of space, whether it's a memory from the past, or whether it's something about the future, whether it's something that I'm thinking right now. So that space should let me do all of that.
So good design is actually vague to me, because so basically it's got nothing to do with design per se. It's more to do with what experience you take away from that space. For me, um, if some space stays in my head, I'm able to recall it. I'm able to recall the corners without actually consciously noticing them, is good design to me. Uh, at the same time, I feel the ease of being in that space. It could also be from a perspective where you're using the space. It could be like, I could be in the most beautiful place, but I could be sitting on the most uncomfortable chair. That's just destroyed it for me. Like, it good design has to be with so many other things that I tangibly touch in the space. So yeah, for me, it's one feeling for sure, but also the tangibility of things there is design for me.
But don't you think to be able to bring in that kind of an experience is also could be done by design and not just by accident? So that could be good design.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, so as I said that, if I am to think of it theoretically there will be like 6 pointers where if you tick them all, then it's a good design. But for me personally, the kind of feeling that I go out taking away from that space is basically good design.
Surbhi.
I think the question there are so many answers to
Of
it.
course,
There's
of
not
course.
one single
So what's
answer.
good design to you?
Personally, to me, okay, I think something which is very effortless, that when you're in that space, everything blends, everything's balanced visually. And I think it gives you freedom to think, as she said, that it doesn't clutter your mind, it frees you. In that sense, it's effortless for you also to be in that space. And personally for me, I really like spaces where the space planning is done correctly on how the user uses it. Even every storage, every drawer planned correctly so that it's just what is required. Everything fits well in the right place. And whether it's your services, when they are well planned services, I think the house is great. There are no plumbing issues, there are no other later issues in the house. So, and green. So I personally, I would love a small house in a big garden. So where there is a lot of space, air around, I think.
In fact, that brings me to a very interesting question, which is really very on the top of everybody's mind these days. How important is sustainability in your design? I mean, do you think of sustainability as a tangible design criteria when you're designing? I mean, Surbhi?
Yeah, definitely. I think, of course, not to the level where you know that no ACs have to be planned, and then the client has to be ready to experiment with that kind of material. And definitely, I'm not an expert. Then I'll bring in an expert who would plan it like that. But at multiple levels, definitely having a sustainable, eco-friendly house materials is very important. How with basic things you can make the house little cooler. How you can bring in materials which are friendly, temperature friendly, and all of that.
Yeah, and even locally sourced, that
Locally
itself
sourced,
is
yes.
a huge.
And maybe design elements also from the local way of doing architecture.
So Neha, how important is sustainability or using sustainable materials?
It's important, but I would want to point out how am I actually able to do it. Theoretically, there are hundreds of things.
No, I'm saying how do you do it? I mean,
Yes.
Of course, we love reading about it.
So one is locally sourcing, and the other that I have actually been able to do is just repurposing the furniture, to be honest. Otherwise, it's all, it's very well said, but it's not really being done because it's not possible. You're not, especially talking about Delhi.
Yeah.
You're not sitting in a city which is the climate allows you to do this. As we talked about, we all want greenery. How do you bring in that greenery? You put in big glasses. Once you put that big glasses, your house is all heated up. So you put another big AC to cool down the house. So sustainability goes for a toss. You actually, the very...
Well, that's a longer debate. So where you put the window is also important.
Where you put the window, the thickness of the glass.
All that is important. Yeah. So having said that, what about you? I mean, is sustainability
it's a very important 100%. And also because, we tend to do a lot of apartments. Now with apartments, you don't have the luxury to design where your window is going to be. If it's a south face, it is a south face. So it was actually this conversation we had with one of a college teacher who teaches sustainability, and I actually asked him that, how do you promote this sort of a thing in an apartment? He said, you have to start at the most basic level, which is as basic as putting blackout lining behind your curtains. because the heat gain needs to reduce. You can't change the UPVC, you can't change the aluminiums because it's part of the elevation, etc. And so he said that, the basic thing you do is put out your curtains. Number 2 is air conditioning के लिए जैसे जब बात हुई. So he said, see, you can't forego air conditioning in Delhi. You die. You can't, right? But what we can do instead is we use those natural plasters, what we all call lime wash these days. You start plastering your walls in them. Even though we have ash brick walls or we have that My One construction going on, you still at least have a top coat that gives you a sense of cool and calm. You start using a lot of natural stone for flooring, right? Because that again brings down a lot of temperature. Then these days you have started, I don't know how efficient they are, but at least we are trying to incorporate them. A lot of these green cork sheets have started coming in. If you try to panel your walls with them, the heat, if also on an external wall only. So if you're putting those kind of boards on the external wall, then the heat gain from that particular wall reduces. So these are the kind of things that you can actually incorporate. You can't break a house in an apartment and, do everything else.
We are definitely doing, practicing all forms. Whether we are going for a LEED certificate or not, we practice basic things in all our projects. Some clients go for a LEED certification. We are in the process of getting a lot of LEED certificates, and sometimes clients don't. But still, the basics of HVAC or it's like plumbing fixtures that we use, or any other thing, we do our basic simulation that we have to do, and we follow all whatever possible, I think, in all our projects. So whether it's a residence or it's a university or it's
healthcare hospital. That's good to know, actually, that, because I think sustainability has to be the way forward. We can't be as, careless about using our environment the way we are.
Yeah, we have to contribute.
I think now clients are also educated. They also try. Sometimes it's like an added cost, like for an insulated glass or something. So it depends. So many times we...
actually clients are becoming quite willing. I mean, simple things like, heat exchangers instead of geysers. They understand that it's a bigger expense, but that it recovers over time. You use a
solar panels.
Solar
panels are such a big thing, big hit. Everybody wants to, understand. Anybody who's building like an individual housing wants to understand how this works, because they're also looking at it from that economic perspective, wherein you're going to start saving on some electricity
in our
bills and costs.
bigger projects, we are even supplying electricity to the other. We are giving electricity to other people.
To the grid.
To the grid, yeah.
So net metering and all that.
So we are doing that.
I think that's important, and I think designers will have to pave the way and actually educate the people, because
it will be
very
our
often
responsibility.
It's in a way a responsibility, because very often clients do not know
exactly
about these things. Even inline geysers and even
water
faucets
like we tell the clients, you use this one, which is a low flow thing, instead of this, so there's no cost differential. But we prefer that you use this one, so they do it. So I think
even educating clients about lifestyles. I think there are people who would use centralized ACs. So even if they're sitting in one room, the whole house is getting cold. So you have to kind of bring that in.
Correct.
I think that's a responsibility that we all have to take.
And we are using building management systems. We are otherwise also we are using STPs everywhere now. पहले पुराने ज़माने वाले लोग बोलते थे क्या ज़रूरत है इसको लगाने की, इतने करोड़ों का खर्चा है. But now I think every client is putting and recycling all the water.
Very eager, but they are ready to. If you suggest them, they're ready to accept it.
I think clients are becoming definitely a little more aware and accepting to these kind of practices. Great. So I think that kind of winds up, but there's only one thing that I want to do, Varsha, and this is something that I've always wanted to hear from you. Can you talk to us about the transformation of tiles, stones to tiles, and how they have kind of evolved over time? And I'm sure all of us would like to hear this.
So my journey has, shown me a lot of transformation of tiles. And I have seen people who are coming in the showroom and they are aghast and they're like, are these tiles? Really? Is this stone or tile? So they're not able to make the difference. Why? Because over the years, the concept of tiles has changed completely. So earlier it was very rectangular, very repetitive, very boring finishes, very over glossy finishes, which are very artificial. But if you see today, there is no limit to the size of the tile. We have 10 feet tiles. I mean, it's larger than the slab size of a stone. Then we have finishes, which are many more than the stone finishes. Like we have satin finish, we have matte, we have rustic finish, and we have lepato finish, many kinds of finish, which are more closer to the natural surfaces, you know, not the man-made. It doesn't look like a man-made surface at all. So this is all technology that has come now. And of course, the digital revolution. I mean, the tiles, they don't look like tiles. The print on those are as good as natural stone. So you can't make a difference if you put two, surfaces together. You can hardly. A general homeowner, common homeowner, would not be able to even make out the difference. So it has been hugely. It is hugely transformed, and people should come and see. I mean, I invite people to come and see how tiles can really be also sustainable. They are also sustainable, and they solve the purpose. And of course, there are.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is that there's so much to play with when it comes to tiles.
Correct.
Color, size,
I mean, now
thickness,
imagine
it's like
people have started putting tiles on walls
choices.
all the way up. I mean, at the way these guys have their wall. I mean, they're putting wallpapers to shame with the way they're doing their tiles.
We actually
And
did a
imagine,
washroom,
yeah.
and I had two people
Yeah.
who asked me twice, "You sure tiles है wallpaper नहीं है?"
हाँ. And अब सोचो, there's no seepage issue. हम लोग क्या करते थे? हम पहले छोटी वाली सस्ती वाली टाइलें लगाते थे, उसके ऊपर पैनलिंग करते थे, just so that there's no seepage issue, there's no other sort of mold issues. Tiles are solving all those purposes also.
So now we print even artworks on tiles. So we have a lot of collection, artwork collection, wallpaper patterns, even murals, or even family photographs for that matter. We print it on tiles and we put it in common areas, bathrooms, powder washrooms, and entrance foyers, which makes a beautiful mural. So, I mean, sky's the limit.
So, we are all on the other side of the table where we are the users. We come and we use your tiles. On the other side, I mean, you are the one who's actually bringing it to us. What are your challenges?
Challenge is, I mean, the problem is that we have too many options. That's the problem. The more we show the customer, they get very confused. Otherwise, there's no problem at all. The only thing, I think, one more thing I would like to say and urge to the customers, that they should trust their designers and the materials that are used to lay the tiles, because somewhere they compromise on the adhesive or the material which is used to lay the tiles. They save 10 or 20 rupees per square feet, and it ends up cracking. The tile ends up cracking because the bed is not laid properly with the adhesive. So today we only have vitrified tiles. Earlier we used to have ceramic tiles which were porous. Now we only have vitrified tiles, and those tiles are only successful with adhesives, good strength adhesives. But because it is a little more expensive than the cement, people have the tendency to avoid that expense.
And I think skilled labor also.
Yeah,
Just a difference of 5 rupees per square feet, they'll put someone else who is like literally, if I use,
so I have changed.
That's true for anything.
Anything.
I mean, you get a bad carpenter. I mean, forget that. You buy the best. You buy the best ingredients, and you have a bad cook. So
That's very rightly put. Actually, you have the best ingredient, but you have a bad cook. It spoils everything. So there are many sites I have just redone the tiles just because those got cracked because they use cement, not adhesive. That was the only challenge, that the masons they don't want the clients to scale
I
up.
think now with your tiles, you should also sell that square foot of adhesive.
We do, but we have to educate the
Yeah,
customers
yeah.
that how important it is
Yeah.
to give it a seamless and strength
Yeah.
look, that is the thing.
Wonderful. On that note, I'll thank each of you. Thank you so much for this wonderful insight into all of this. And at least for me, it was a hugely educational, session. I learned so much, and I hope it was the same for all of you.
Yeah,
Thank you
yes.
so much.
Thank you so much.
Really
Thanks to
like
Varsha and you. It was really very interesting
I would
conversation
really
that we
like to
had
thank
today.
all of you, and especially Mr. Majumdar. बहुत अच्छा session रहा and really insightful. I'm sure our audience will really enjoy it and they will get something out of it.
I'm sure.
Thank
And
you.
on that note, we should do it again.
Yes.